Hi, it's Vicky here with just a little conversation around breastfeeding toddlers. Now, I breastfed all of my 5 children into toddlerhood, varying ages and stages. And, one weaned when I was pregnant. He was around 18 months. Another one actually breastfed through a pregnancy. And it was really interesting because she was a toddler, she decided that the baby could have one side and the other side was hers. And interestingly, the side that she decided was the baby's dried up and then it started producing colostrum. Whereas the one that my other daughter decided to keep feeding on just continued producing mature milk until after I'd had the baby, her baby sister. And then there was just, colostrum came in and transitional milk and mature milk just came in just as normal. So it's your release of hormones. I had people saying, but your newborn won't get the colostrum. Well, your body's really, really clever. Your release of your placenta changes your hormones so that you do produce colostrum and your baby will get all of those antibodies and so will your toddler, and your toddler might find she has a little few loose bowel motions. Another gorgeous thing was one of my little boys was actually 3 and he just pulled on his little working boots, his little Blundstones. He wasn't breastfeeding at that. He was still a breastfed child, but he wasn't asking for a boob or anything else, but just matter of factly said, when I get scared, booby makes me feel brave. And that's kind of one of the lovely things about breastfeeding a toddler, because you have this exchange and they don't breastfeed all the time, like when you have a newborn. I mean, sometimes they might, if they're getting another tooth through, another molar through, or they're unwell, yes, they will step up their feeding. If there's been some changes and they need some extra comfort, of course they'll step up their feeding. But there's lots of myths around breastfeeding toddlers that people will tell you. They'll go, I've had some dumb things say to me, and I've had, he'll still need a boob when he goes to school, and I won't, well, it's not far to come home for lunch. I can go across the road. At that particular point in time, we were living across the road from his school. We were in New Zealand, and I used to say, oh, well, he can come home for lunch. I'd just say stupid things to people and get those answers ready. Another one was, he'll still need a boob at his 21st. And I used to go, well, he might, but it's not going to be mine. And, one of my teenage sons had a poster of Samantha Fox and her boobs on his bedroom wall. So he's sort of, he's probably about 13 or 14 by then that he stuck that poster up. And I think, they do wean and they don't want their mother's boobs forever anyway. And you can trust your child to wean. But some of the stupid things I've been told are, there's no goodness in your milk now. Now, there's no use by date on breast milk. And in fact, when your child is in that second year of life, he's not breastfeeding as much. And all the antibodies, the fats, the proteins, the vitamins, they're all concentrated in your milk. So he's actually still getting goodness. You're still providing a lot of nutrition for that child. I've heard people say, don't feed them so much breast milk because they won't eat other foods and they need to drink water and eat other foods. Well, they don't. I mean, yes, they do, and they naturally will eat other foods. But we don't have to stress about how much food a child is eating if he's still breastfeeding, because that's his little insurance. And sometimes children are allergic, and the breast milk is a good buffer for their immune system if that's what they're doing. And they're going to be growing, as long as they're growing, they're healthy, they've got good iron supplies, all of that. If you're worried, you can get it checked if you're worried. If your child's lethargic, most of them are not lethargic when they're toddlers. Sometimes we wish they'd be a bit more lethargic. If they're old enough to ask for it, they're old enough to wean. Your baby's been asking for the breast since he was born. He's had little signals, and now he will have signals. And, there'll be babies toddlers who ask for a bottle or a pacifier or some other comfort toy. But you are your child's comfort, so it's okay. None of my kids actually had transitional objects. They kind of went from me to the boob to, I don't know, just being okay about not needing something else at that time. So if you are going to breastfeed a toddler, it's really good to think about it just beforehand and teach your child a word for breastfeeding if you want to. I had a younger brother and he taught my first child to say titty at about 9 months. So of course that's what my child asked for when he wanted a boob or a breast. It was a titty. So if you want to if you want to be a bit more private about it, come up with another word so that when your child does ask for it, when you're out or you're with relatives or friends that, may not kind of appreciate that toddlers can breastfeed, you might like a separate kind of word so that your child can ask. People say, but he has teeth. Yeah, but his tongue will be over his bottom teeth. He'll make a suction with his lips and he won't be actively biting. Okay? And if he is actively biting, well, you take a toddler off and you say, no biting. Biting hurts, mummy. You don't yell at them, but, you stop. Because sometimes those molars and canines can really, really hurt. So give them something else to chew on instead of biting. Oh, why don't you just pump and give it to him in a cup? Hey, honey, who's got enough time to pump for a toddler? If you've got a newborn, yeah, you might do that. But if you're still breastfeeding your toddler, you don't have a newborn, the letdown's a bit slower. It's not easy to pump, and who the hell's going to do that anyway? And you know what? When your child sucks from your breast, he's transferring his saliva from all those little bugs he's got from his playmates, from the things he's playing with, from the equipment at the park, from the toys at playgroup. All that bacteria that he's been in contact with is going to be transferred through his saliva back to your breast. And that's going to stimulate you to make antibodies that are going to help protect that toddler's immune system. That doesn't happen with a cup. Okay? So, really, breastfeeding is also about comfort and connection and emotional regulation. All the hormones in your breast milk, the cholecystokinin, the oxytocin, the endocannabinoids that are in there, they all have really relaxing effects on your toddler. And it changes his brain chemistry at a physiological level right when he's having big emotions, but he doesn't actually have the brain wiring to help him manage those emotions. So it's a beautiful way to help your child calm. If you aren't breastfeeding and you want to help your child with those big emotions, you would probably give them a cuddle. You might give them a bottle or a comfort toy, and that's fine. But don't suggest to a mum who's breastfeeding her toddler that she shouldn't be, or that she should give it to her, give her milk to her kid in a cup, because breastfeeding is about so much more than the milk. It's about comfort, it's about connection, and it's something that you've been doing for your child ever since he was a little baby. And you have things like you're doing it for yourself. You're not doing it for your child as though you've got some kind of weird need inside you. Of course we breastfeed our toddlers for ourselves because it's a damn good mothering tool. It soothes all those little knocks and bumps, and they fall over, they have a comfort, they have a bit of boob, their emotions are all settled down, you're helping them, but you know what, they're overtired, or they've had a tantrum and they're quite scared by their emotions, or they're overtired and you want to help them get to sleep and just relax and switch off, because those busy little brains just keep going and going and going, don't they? When I say toddler, I mean, it might be just a little 1-year-old, it might be a 2-year-old, or it might be an older baby than that, who still breastfeeds sometimes. And most of all, you can't make a child breastfeed. You can't make a toddler or a baby breastfeed. You can't make them do that. So when your child decides to wean, that's it, they're done. And that can be quite sad for some mothers. I know I found my children, it was really gradual, and then I'd kind of think, oh, she hasn't had a breastfeed. When did she last breastfeed? And I didn't really know. It would be a few weeks or whatever. And I'd think, oh, it hasn't asked. And sometimes it might be a couple of weeks and they ask again and the milk might have dried up. That happened to me during my first pregnancy. My second pregnancy with my first child. And he wasn't feeding probably most days, but not every single day. And then my milk supply dried up because of the pregnancy hormones, because my breasts weren't getting enough stimulation, because he wasn't feeding a lot, and he went to have a drink. I went, it's all gone. And there was no emotional stress, nothing else. If you do want to know how to wean, I have an ebook, Weaning with Love. If you go onto my website, pinkymckay.com, you can have a look at that ebook, Weaning with Love. And it's got strategies to help you guide the weaning process if you want to. And if you're happy to allow your child to, wean when it suits them. So weaning can be mother-led or baby-led. And you can relax and allow them to, but it'll give you some confidence if that's what you want to do. You know what? The hardest thing is he'll remember that. What a lovely memory. I think if your toddler does remember, that's a beautiful memory. And I have asked my kids, I asked one of my daughters, can you remember being breastfed? No. But she said, I can remember you squirting breast milk in my eye when I had a sore eye. And I was actually probably breastfeeding her baby sister at that stage. So even when I was tandem nursing, my older baby weaned herself while her sister was still breastfeeding. So again, it comes from the child. When they're ready, and they will do it. You can trust them. Now, if you're a little bit worried about, when people say your child will remember that, and almost as though it's not a nice thing to remember, there's a beautiful quote by Kabongo, who's an African chief. He was 90 years old, and he said, my early years are connected with my mother. At first, she was always there. I can remember the comforting feeling of her body as she carried me on her back, and the smell of her skin, and everything came from her. Now, wouldn't that be a beautiful memory for our children? That you were there for them, whether that's breastfeeding, whether that's cuddling, whether that's carrying, however it is. But, if a mother is breastfeeding her toddler, it's natural, it's normal. The world average age of weaning is somewhere between 4 and 7 years. So I think in our culture we've knocked the average down quite a bit. So if you want to continue nursing your child, comforting them at the breast, you can be reassured that they will stop breastfeeding when they're ready. And if you want to guide it, that's fine too. We all have different reasons, different support, different systems, sometimes women ask me about weaning because they just want their body back. It's enough for them. So it's okay. Breastfeeding a toddler, you're doing a great job. And it's a beautiful mothering tool.